Have you even heard of Electric State? I'm yawning because I just finished watching it. I imagine you haven't heard of Electric State, but you probably have heard of $320 million. What if I told you that was the budget for this film? It's diabolical to be spending $320 million on a movie that has less hype than Big Chungus right now. The only reason I even heard any peeps about this film is because a lot of people mentioned this absurd budget and also that it's just not a good movie either. It has like a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes, with most critics getting their weenies out and spit roasting it. Now, I finished it, so I'll give you a review on it, but I have, like multiple times now, ranted and raved about how preposterous these budgets have become for movies that don't warrant it whatsoever. Like Borderlands, for example. And this has to be a scam, right? There has to be some kind of like dirty dealings, money laundering, something. Because after watching this, I truly cannot understand where this money went. Chris Pratt is in it, so maybe he took like a fourth of the budget just to have him in it. I have no idea, but if I was an accountant working for Netflix right now, you might find me trying to drown myself in the bathtub, because this is just outrageous. Like, it's criminal. $320 million for a stinker of this caliber. It doesn't make sense. Like, the numbers don't add up. It's directed by Joe and Anthony Russo of Marvel fame, and I think maybe Netflix thought they were going to get their own Avengers movie, but what they got instead was the Ass-Vengers here. Not the most creative of insults, but this movie has sapped my neurons right now. They're not firing on all cylinders. Now, I learned from Stream that Electric State is actually based on a graphic novel. I don't know how expensive it was to get the rights to do that, but by far the best part about this movie is the robot design. The robots look amazing. I'm actually a huge fan of the way the robots look, and really the whole world that's here is a really interesting one. If only it told an interesting story. Maybe it cost $150 million to get the rights to adapt this graphic novel, and they had no budget left for writers, but it is inexcusable. Why would you have this much of a budget and allocate none of it to the most important part of a movie? The story. Giving the viewer a reason to get invested and care. Because there is none of that here at all. It is so flat. It is a slog to get through. It tells the most generic story we have seen no less than 100 times before. No deviations from the formula whatsoever. Within the first 15 minutes, you know how the whole movie is going to play out and exactly how it's going to end. And it doesn't care. It's unapologetic about that. Which I could almost excuse if the journey there was enjoyable, but it's not. Is it a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes bad? No, not quite. I'd probably put it around like the 30% ballpark-ish, and that's mainly just because it is really carried by the robots. I just think they're very cool. But they don't get utilized at all. They have like your really generic monologues about, well, we're alive and we want to be treated as if we're alive. And of course that's like the central conflict, because after a war that broke out between humans and robots, there was a treaty that was signed that was really not in favor of the robots. And now the world is in a post-war state where everyone's basically got, if any of you have seen this movie with Bruce Willis, surrogates, where they jack in and they're jacked into a robot. Except they don't look like humans. It is just a robot that they control remotely, while their human counterpart just kind of rots away, gets fat and yucky and gross. And that's become like a mainstay of civilization post-war. And we follow Millie Bobby Brown's character, who was in a car accident where she lost her whole family, but they don't give a fuck about the parents. Instead, it's all about the brother that she lost in the car accident, because he was a super genius, turbo Einstein brainiac. And now, does anyone give a fuck about spoilers? I was going to avoid spoilers, but anyone care? Anybody? I'm hearing crickets. I'm going to guess not. She finds out her brother didn't actually die in that car crash. The creators of that technology with the Neurocaster, where they're jacking into the robots, and it's how they were able to beat the robots in the war. Well, the whole reason they were able to do that is because after that car accident, they kidnapped her brother because they noticed he was really smart. So now he powers the entire company. The everything, like the entire company infrastructure runs through his brain while they keep him comatose in like a vegetative state. However, there was a little open door in the mainframe that allowed him to, like, I don't know, shoot his consciousness into a nearby robot, which is based on his favorite cartoon. And once he takes control of that robot, he escapes, finds his sister, and the two of them work together to try and get back to his body and save him. And they meet Chris Pratt and his little robot friend along the way. And they're hunted by Giancarlo Esposito, who's the butcher. He kills robots. The plot goes almost exactly how you expect. They end up at the surviving robots zone, and they learn these robots are kind of good guys. So they team up to try and take down the bad guys. It's not good. What's really interesting, though, is how there's pretty much no comedy at all in the movie. Like, there's some jokes here and there, but they suck. I thought going into it was going to try and be more humorous, especially given, like, the silly concept, because all the robots are basically fucking mascots. Like, the leader of the robots is Mr. Peanut. So I thought it was going to, like, not take itself super seriously, but it really does. Pretty surprising given the Russo's history with their usage of comedy. I guess they really wanted to try and turn a new leaf, and this was definitely not the right movie to attempt that in. Tell you that much, that's for damn sure. Would the movie have been saved by some zingers flying here and there with gut-busting laughs? Probably not. Still would have been an extremely boring movie that had nothing to offer beyond just a really cool, underutilized world. So it wouldn't have really changed too much, but at least it would have spruced it up a bit to the point where it wasn't so mind-numbing. There's really not a whole lot of reason to even dive into a thorough review here. It is the most by-the-numbers shit imaginable, which is even more head-scratching given the budget. Why spend $320 million to make the same movie that gets made for $60 million every other week? What do you gain? You only stand to lose a ton of money. That's just a bad investment. It literally does the same shit that tons of other movies do for a fraction of the cost. I don't understand what Netflix is really aiming for here. They're also not really advertising it. I hadn't heard anything about it other than people dunking on it for being bad and extremely expensive. Like, who is in charge of their finance department there? I really do not get it. I also just really don't know who the target audience is for this movie in the first place, because it's a movie that's clearly aimed for all ages, because it's not, you know, like the action doesn't have people getting their fucking skull ripped off or anything. There's no foul language, no bad words. Like, I think there's, like, hell said once, and I think they said shit once that I remember. So, like, it's a movie that's clearly for all ages, but I don't think kids would really care to watch it because, A, all of, like, the recognizable brands here are ones that I don't think kids will ever recognize. Like, there's no Fortnite representation or anything. There's no fucking Minecraft Steve bot. Like, I don't think kids are going to be going crazy like, Mom, look, it's the Planters Peanut! Like, I don't see that happening. It also, like, relies heavily on, like, the early 90s aesthetic, which, again, kids weren't alive for. Like, I don't think they're gonna care. And also, like, when there is action or anything at all happening, it's really lame. So, like, one of the robots uses a slingshot to shoot gumballs, or at least what I think is gumballs, at the bad guys that come in with their robot suits and their guns. And their guns are basically, they just shoot, like, a couple beams of electricity. But, like, he shoots gumballs at him, and then the guys with the robots are like, oh! Which is super weird. Like, clearly that's aimed at, like, a kid, you know, like, slipping on a banana peel type shit. Millie Bobby Brown's weapon is a paintball gun. Which, how the fuck would that ever defeat these robots? She's shooting them with a paintball gun, and they're going, oh, oh, oh! And then they'll die, because they freak out and, like, end up killing themselves. Like, it's clearly aimed at a younger audience, but I don't see why a younger audience would like this movie or choose to watch it. Anyway, though, just another huge waste of money. Definitely don't think it was worth $320 million to pump into this. That's really about it. See ya.